Hey, Clint, it's
Good.
Bobby. How's it going?
Hey, Bobby. Well, it's going nowhere fast.
Yeah, that I get. I saw today it was like day 50 with no sports, day 4. I mean, it does feel like a big old blur, doesn't it?
Yeah, it starts to just not matter what day of the week it is.
Well, before we get rolling here, we're already rolling, but before we get like moving through, I just want to tell you and I think I've mentioned this to you before, but I'm just a massive fan of yours. So it's really exciting for me to get to talk to you.
Well, thanks. I'm a fan of yours, but I really wasn't a massive fan until I saw you dance.
Well, you probably that isn't a good look for me with you. So we'll move away from that.
Oh my God! No,
Yeah.
I was asked to do that show a couple of times, and it's just absolutely no way on earth. You're a brave man. Well, obviously you have the chops too. I would have. I only dance the silly dance to make my family laugh.
Well, I feel like that's what I should do. Just only the silly dance. Well, I'm excited to see that you're putting out a new record coming out. Hey, tell me about Out of Sane because I was thinking about this. Is that the opposite of insane? Out of Sane?
It's actually there are multiple interpretations of that, and it really comes from a little play online from one of the songs. Song title is "What I Knew Then," and the line is "a little in and out of sane." So I didn't like any of the song titles. I usually will name an album after one of the song titles that sums it up. I didn't like any of them for that. The same with my last album, On Purpose. So I just scoured the lyrics for something that made sense. And when I thought of that, when I thought this is seriously speaking, that the writing of songs, the creating of music is really born out of sanity, and then you go through the recording process, and by the time it's down to all the music's recorded, and now I'm trying to mix it and make sure scientifically everything has its place and it's going to sound good on any system it's played on. It just becomes a science, and it's really kind of borders on insanity. At that point, it's no longer this art form; it's a science, and it's just 5 hours of sleep a night and working on that, for 18 hours a day. And by the time I get to the end of making an album, there's a reason I only do one about every 5 years now. I'm getting no sleep. I want it to be over. And so I start out sane and end up insane. And I thought it really sums it up. When I always wanted to use that photo for the cover with that American flag guitar of mine. And I thought that also brings in another interpretation, because it seems our country, is a little in and out of sane. And just depending on what cycle we're in. So I thought this is a title that anybody can see any way they want for their own uses. But for me, it spoke to the album. It spoke to the process, which it's not ironwork, which I've done.
Right.
But it gets to be grueling at one point. You just need to call it finished, but not until it's right.
Well, the full album is set for a June 19th release. We're 6 or so weeks out from that. Do you feel like any of this that's happening now is going to affect that release date, or are you determined that that's the date the project's coming out?
Oh, we're firm. We're firm on it. We got the video. The second and third Instant Grat tracks are lined up and ready to go. It's all in the system, and I've just gotten my little, I'm going to call it a broadcast studio. It's my recording studio, but I've finally gotten all the elements. It's hard to, a lot of stuff like this is back ordered. I needed a converter to go from my, my 4K camera into the computer to use it, for live streaming, and also wanted to tie that in with Pro Tools. So it's been this step-by-step process of getting to the point where I can start live streaming and promoting the album from my studio.
I've been watching The Last Dance, which is the Bulls documentary. I think they've put out 4 episodes now, and it's about Michael Jordan's his final season with the Bulls, and they do this really cool thing where they go back in time, current, that kind of thing. And if you'll kind of indulge me a little bit, I'd like to do that now, where I want to talk about new stuff and then kind of do a flashback and then come back and forth with a new project. Will you indulge me in this type of?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Perfect. We'll see how it goes. I like you, had a lot of jobs before I kind of got into what I'm doing now, where I worked at a marina and did bait work. Were you a bait cutter? What was that job about?
That was my one of the guys at my management company, when he was taking down stuff about me, what I'd done. He was basically putting together a simple bio, and he laughed and said, "I'm going to put," because I was an iron worker. I worked in security as a consultant salesman and sold security services, and I actually didn't. I starved, but I was a newspaper solicitor, had a paper route as a kid, and he laughed and said, "I'm going to put down bait cutter and fishing guide," and I laughed, and then suddenly it's in a newspaper, and it went everywhere, and so it was not true, and I thought he was kidding, but they had managed rock and roll acts, and I was their first country act, and I think maybe they it's like Kenny Loggins told me once. He said, when I'm not doing anything interesting, I'm paraphrasing, he said, I'll make stuff up and say I'm somewhere I'm not. And just after he told me that, I was doing an interview over the phone, and interviewer asked me, "So where are you calling from?" I said, "I'm in Barbados." "Really? What are you doing in Barbados?" And I said, "I'm not really in Barbados." I couldn't even do it.
That's funny. So you never were a bait cutter, but now that's been part of your bio legacy all these years.
Yep. People still want me to tell them where the fish are.
That's funny because I literally was a bait cutter, and I don't put that in my bio anymore. I was a cricket grabber because I would shovel crickets into tubes for people. I would cut bait. I would catch shad and give them out. I was a bit of a small time fishing guide, and man, maybe I should put that in my bio. People ask me about that because I was really interested to hear that story.
You want that word to get around, so when this job falls apart on you, you'll have somewhere to go. The demand will be there.
I wonder, as you have this new record, we're weeks away from it coming out, and you are a guitar player. Are you playing lead on the record?
I play most of the electric guitar stuff. I do some slide dobro and electric slide. Yeah.
Do you find
I started that with the Nothing But the Taillights album when Stroud heard my demos, and he said, "You should play guitar on this." Well, Hayden Nicholas, my lead guitar player, really got me started when we were writing songs one day, and he said, "With your finger picking style, you could play licks like this Ray Flack stuff." And I laughed and laughed, and he said, "No, really," and he taught me some things to practice, and I went home and got a little. I had a sequencer, call it a metronome, and I started practicing slowly and sped it up until I was convinced I can play stuff like this. And so I played most of the everything but 3 songs on Nothing But the Taillights, and then I did Electrified, which was all acoustic, and there wasn't much to do there. And then I started doing it again, and on the On Purpose album, I really dug into it and made myself take on a lot of that work, whereas I might reach out to Hayden to hurry it along, or Steve Warner or Brent Mason, because they can do it in a flash. And I decided I'm going to take the time. It takes me longer, but if I can make myself happy as the producer artist, then I'm going to do it. And so it's it's really satisfying, and it's been a really it's been a real, you know, I like, you'd like to think you're going to get better with age, right? And the fact that I can play guitar solos on Tuckered Out now, which is our barn burner, really convinced me that there's still room for growth, but I have to work really hard for it.
I'm going to run some numbers by you here. The number is 1991. You were chosen by People magazine as one of the 50 most beautiful people in the entire world. How vivid is that memory when you got that call?
You know what I just flashed on? All the makeup and wardrobe it took to earn that title. You know, it's funny. I can't even remember, you know, I can't even remember that so much was happening to me, coming at me, happening for me. I remember now that you say it that I was given that, but no, I can't remember that feeling. You know, I imagine I'm on the bus with the band and they're all mocking me. That's probably what we were doing.
Whenever something like that's outside of the country genre happens, because that's very mainstream, do you start to hear from other people that you thought you would never hear from, that to go, hey, I saw you in People magazine. I also like what you're doing. I just haven't reached out yet.
No, not really in that way. I would meet people outside my genre. I assume you're talking about other artists.
Yeah, artists, actors, anyone that was like, hey, I saw you in People
comedians.
magazine. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was never clear to me that one thing was happening because of the other. I would meet people like Gary Shandling when he was hosting the Grammys, and he said, "Hey, you should do my show. You should come on and let's goof around." And so I did his show and ended up going and playing basketball over at his house every Sunday for quite a while, and meeting a lot of people over there. I think that's how Kevin Nealon and I became friends. I met Eric Idle because Lisa worked with a fitness trainer who trained Eric's wife, and so I said, hey, would you give this phone number to Tanya and see if I'm going to record a Monty Python song and see if he would be willing to do something on it. And so that led to working with him and becoming friends with him, and then meeting people through him, other comedians and actors, and it just never. I never really knew. Okay, well, this is because of my music, or it's just because I reached out or I met someone through someone else.
You have 22 number one singles. When you play the first lick of what song do people react the loudest to?
Well, that Killin Time lick on the intro is pretty definitive. Better Man is really recognizable, and those were huge for me, like The Rain. Of course, I don't do the intro lick in concert from Like the Rain. I wrote another little acoustic guitar piece that I do on the front end of that, and then when I start singing it, they know. And Nothing But the Taillights, that lick's really recognizable.
With some of these songs that you play, and you have played for, at this point for 30 years, do you ever go, man, I want to switch up this arrangement because I'm kind of bored with playing the same song over and over and over again? Like, you want to play it for the fans, but you want to switch it up a little bit. Has that happened at all?
Yeah, I'm really careful about that. I keep in mind that they have some ownership in it and an attachment. And so, I'm a music fan. When I see someone in concert, I've seen that happen and not liked it. I've also seen it and liked it. I've done that on records where I did a version of Put Yourself in My Shoes, a real slow, blues version with a 12-piece horn section instead of harmonica, and I did that for the Second Greatest Hits extra tracks. And I did a version of No Time to Kill with Bruce Hornsby that was a real funky version. And I played around with A Bad Goodbye, and I felt some liberties with that because I wasn't doing it with Winona, so the song wasn't going to be what it was anyway. I messed around with a different arrangement. But I'm careful. I try to be careful about it.
The new song that I was listening to before I called you is America, Still in Love with You. I'm going to play a little bit of that real quick, and I'm going to ask you a couple thoughts about it. Here's a clip of America, Still in Love with You.
I'm still in love with you, in spite of all our ups and downs. We've gone our separate ways, but we've come back around.
So,
And even when
you wrote that with Steve Warner, eh?
Yep.
So tell me about that day when you guys go into the room to do this.
Well, Steve had been coming over. We'd been doing stuff together or just hanging out. He would come by for one reason or another, and every time I'd say, you didn't bring your new Steve Warner Gretsch? I ordered one, and it was taking a while to get it, and I hadn't seen his, and oh, I forgot. And so one day I said, well, you just have to come over with the intent of bringing that guitar so you won't forget it. So he came over one day just to show me that, and we were playing around with it. And after we'd played around for a while, I said, oh, I have this new song idea. And I told it to him, and it was kind of the basics of the chorus. Sounds like a love song, to a woman, and you get to the end of the chorus, and America is the lady. And he just reacted perfectly, just couldn't, I didn't see that coming, and yeah, we got to write that. And I just launched into it. I said, what could we do musically? And we started playing around, and we just dove right in, literally standing around the kitchen, the den off the kitchen. And once I saw that we had a structure and a direction on the verses, I started texting musicians to see who was available, and within about 4 days, we were all in the studio recording it. And I knew I had to hurry in order to make the deadline for this album, and I wanted it to be on the album, my love of the song and the message, but also it just went so well with the cover, and it just has to be on there. I literally made it about the same day as my deadline, got the master delivered.
Well, the video's out too now, so people can check out not only the song, but America, Still in Love with You. The music video is out, so, man, still making the videos. Huh? Are they harder to make now or easier?
They're harder to make in quarantine. I was, again, just ordering pieces, and they would come, and it was the wrong piece. I would order a lens I thought I needed, and turned out, it just wasn't gonna work for the framing. And back in the day, making them for RCA, of course, I had these great budgets, about $85,000. And I worked with a video producer, Brent Hedgecock, who really enabled me to be a director when I wasn't really a director. But I got to write the treatments. I would write out a treatment for the video, and he would budget it out, and he would come back and he'd say, that's about a $300,000 video. You've got to cut more than $200,000 worth of ideas out of this video. And so that would happen every time. And so we'd finally get it down to where it fit the budget, and we would go shoot it. And he was so much fun to work with, such a creative guy, that when he no longer produced videos, I really lost my enthusiasm for it for a while. And I really just kind of stopped. And then, when I started putting out these records on purpose, and this one, the management company, the first video I did in a while was This Old House, which is an homage to the Grand Ole Opry. And the Opry gave me access to all their archival footage. And so I went through everything and I put together a really nice piece that spoke to the Opry and that old house and that family of, 100 years. And I sent a copy to the management company, and they came back and said, "This is great. This is really great. I love it." And they said, "But we really think you should be in it." I wasn't in it, and I was disappointed and just a big sigh. I said, "No, really, I don't need to be in it." And we went. All of these great, Opry moments. And then the other part was I didn't know how I was going to do it. How was I going to fit into this? And so when I agreed I was going to put myself in the video, I started thinking, and at one moment I had the idea that I could be the backstage guide. And once that happened, the ideas started coming, and the Harry Potter, picture frames come to life idea hit me, and I called my editor, said, "Okay, we have to do this. How easy is it going to be? What do we have to do on the front end?" So once that happened, then the creative juices were flowing, and I managed to get it done.
I was looking back, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here. I'm going from memory. But I look back because I had, like everybody else, I had the Killin Time tape. And so from the record Killin Time. But I don't think that was Better Man, my recollection, was Better Man a single before Killin Time was?
Yeah, actually, the first single was set to be Straight from the Factory. And I was worried about it in cities. I knew it would go over in Texas and Oklahoma, and I was just kind of worried about it. And we got to KZLA and Los Angeles, and Bob Guerra was the program director, and we're sitting in his office, and playing that song, and he stops the tape and he says, "Well," he said, "I could add that if you get it into the top 20. So I knew what that meant. I know a lot about the business yet, but I also didn't know if it would be okay for me to pull this tape I had in my pocket out and play him something from it. Carson Schreiber was the promotion guy there, and I kind of looked over at him and decided I'm just going to do it. And I pulled out the tape and I said, "Bob, pop this in and play that first song." And it was Better Man. And that's what I was thinking, would be a better first single. But I let him play it, and at the end of the first chorus, he stopped the tape and said, "I'll add that out of the box." So we got out of there and called the head of RCA and said, "Here's what just happened," and the decision was made on the spot to switch to A Better Man.
And how fast did that song make you feel like you were firmly in the country music community?
It took a while. I was still traveling around in a 12-seater van pulling a U-Haul trailer 400 or 500 miles a night. And so it was about a 17-week climb to number one. So we started promoting it in, I think, late February, and it peaked in mid-June. I think that's 17 weeks. Anyway, it really seemed to be going fast to me, but that was not a quick climb back then. But it was rare for a debut single to go to number one, and So I'm hearing all these things and, getting perspective. By the time that hit, I think by the time it really, started to peak, I think I was getting some slots opening for the Judds and acts like that. So it started to feel more like this is going to work. I'm going to make it.
When you guys decided to put out Killin Time second, and the song, again, looking back at as my history, I feel like Killin Time was even bigger than a Better Man.
Well, it had a step up on Better Man, and I think it was more of a honky tonk song, and but again, I'm stepping off a debut number one, releasing that, so that song getting at it, I think the promotion team had a little easier time pushing that one out, so it had a little bit of an advantage, but it's also, it's a different feel and flavor and texture. Better Man was kind of Haggard-esque, and Killin Time wasn't. I don't know what I'd call it, but it for me, for my sensibilities, it really felt like this is going to, you're going to get different things from me. It was important to me that I had diversity in my body of work, and I felt like that song really spoke to that.
What was it like plotting a tour back in the late 80s, early 90s? Would you have to use a phone book to call places? Like, on the bus, would you have a phone book to pull over and call places?
Well, I had nothing to do with that part of it. I had to, I just did interviews and showed up at radio stations and targets, etc. And but yeah, back then, we'd have to get to a hotel room, get in there, and get on the phone. And it was a while before I got that 15-pound cellular phone.
Did you ever do one? You talk about Targets and Walmarts. Did you ever go to one of these signings and it got to the point where it was so crazy because you had so many hits in a row?
It was crazy. It was, I've said recently, that back then I was pretty level-headed. I feel like I never got the big head, and that I treated everyone well. But I don't know, because it was so crazy, and I wasn't nearly as comfortable with it as I am now. It took me a long time to get used to being famous and the center of attention and, being in the middle of chaos. It was really hard to adapt to. So I felt like I went from one chaotic moment to another. And there were times where, we're doing 9 shows in a row, one day off, 8 shows in a row, one day off. I mean, they had me really going, and I was reaching the point of really just the point of breaking. And told my manager, I said, I'm not going to last like this, and we have to have some spacing in there. So, we'd end up getting 2 days off, but I'd spend that doing interviews and stuff, So it was really taking a toll on my vocal cords, and I tried to tell them, listen to my melodies and listen to my songs. I'm not Joe Cocker. I can't sing these things with a raspy voice, and I can't hit those high notes if I'm worn out.
You were talking about Dancing with the Stars earlier. I didn't know that you were on the second season of The Apprentice back in the day. What was that like, 2004, doing The Apprentice?
It was really, I didn't know what I was getting into. I saw a clip or two. And, to me, it was going to be going on. Some people were going to be jerks, but we're going to go on and do these tasks. And I like those kinds of challenges. So I agreed to do it. and it was 18 and a half hours a day, every day but Sunday for 5.5 weeks.
Wow.
And some of the people were really hard to be around. Others were great to be around. And so I quickly realized that I don't have a strong enough desire to win this thing to compromise who I am, and I would have had to do that. I felt like, calling up people I know and asking them for money I didn't like. I didn't feel like it was great for the charity. I didn't win a lot of money for my charity. I made more for my charity in 2 days after that than I did in 5.5 weeks. And so I changed. I decided that my goal was going to be to keep my behavior in check and to maintain my standard of character and not let anyone draw me into bad behavior. That was my goal. That became, all right, I'm going to do my best with the tasks. I'm going to really limit, calling up people and asking them for money. And I'm just going to try to get through this without letting someone bring out the worst in me. And I ended up, I was 5th place. I was there right through the end. And, proud of the way I handled it. But it was disgusting. There was some behavior and that was just really hard to watch.
Dang. Well, on a lighter note, we're going to do one old and one new. And I want to run a few things, a few song titles that I love by you, and just a quick sentence or two about, what that song at that time kind of reminds you of. We'll start with When My Ship Comes In.
God, the first thing I thought of was shooting the video for that, and the T-shirt on the sailboat, and it was 40 degrees, and they had a hurricane fan on me. so it's kind of apropos, since the song is about being in Colorado and waiting for your ship to come in. The whole reason that song came about was because of a Skip Ewing song called "The Coast of Colorado," and Hayden and I said, let's jump off from there. And the other part of it was I'm a big Jimmy Buffett fan, and I wanted Gulf of Mexico came out of that love for his music and the style, the feeling of a ship came out of that too.
How about a Good Run of Bad Luck?
Hayden and I were in a hotel in Toronto. It was crazy, snow, blizzard. We had a little time, so we decided to try to write a couple of songs. We wrote Tuckered Out and Good Run of Bad Luck. And Good Run of Bad Luck, we knew what we wanted to say, but we wanted to make sure we had some good lingo, and I played Caesar's Palace a lot, so I thought, they'll know me there if I call, and I called and got them to put me through to one of the pit bosses down at the blackjack tables. And I got him on the phone, and so I started, trying to get slang out of him. And I'd say, like, what do you guys call the high rollers? And he said, high rollers. And okay, got that one. And I'd ask him another question, and it would be kind of the same thing. So it got us pretty much nothing. But we started writing down all of the gambling stuff we could think of and just launched into writing.
One more from back in the day, Like the Rain.
Sitting, and I I had a house. My first house here in Nashville was way up north of town, and I needed to get into town because it was just too much driving. So I found some condo. I was in a high-rise condo in Nashville, and Lisa and I are sitting, looking out the window at Highway 70, and it was just pouring rain, and she loved it. And I really had had enough of rain in Houston. So I started playing, thinking, what's rain music sound like? And I started playing that chord progression of the verse and came up with the first verse. I said, okay, that's enough. I'll get with Hayden next chance we get, and we'll write that.
I want to ask you about the new record, and we'll end with this. By the way, if you're listening right now, Clint's web store, brand new album-focused merchandise that pre-sale autographed copies of the album, pre-sale CDs, vinyl. Go to clintblack.com/store. And I guess about the new record, I wonder, just as someone who creates myself, like, you don't have to produce the whole thing. You don't have to play guitar. You don't have to do all of the intricate things that you're doing. Why do you keep doing it?
To save money. No, it's I from the first demos Hayden and I made, where he showed me how he used an 8-track tape recorder to get as many tracks on there as possible. I became interested in that when about 1996 or 7. I lucked into meeting the guys with DigiDesign who created Pro Tools, and they set me up in our place in L.A. down in the basement with the Pro Tools gear and babysat me through. I beta tested for them. I'd find problems, they'd come fix them, and so I was using Pro Tools and learning more and more about engineering. So when we got this new place in Nashville, I built a studio and really started becoming more and more a student of engineering. So I can sit and work by myself and do a lot of it, and I enjoy it. It's a challenge, but it's a creative outlet, and the result is it's just more of me going into my music. As much of an expression of myself as I can make, I feel it'll be a better end result, or at least it'll be more me. As much of my taste in music, my sentiments, my, what I would like to hear. The songs, when I'm writing them, they're talking to me already, telling me what they want. And then when I cut the basic track with a band, they're really talking then. And so it's more satisfying to give the song what it wants or needs myself than to hire someone to do it.
Well, I really appreciate the time. Good luck with the new record. It will be your 23rd album. Wow. Set for release June 19th, and Clint promises it will be out June 19th. So we're not moving it. It's going to be out June 19th. Dang it. So
that's it.
Clint, it is.
Hey, man, it's great talking to you. Yeah, this was interesting.
I never know what that means. When someone says this is interesting, you're like, interesting good or interesting bad or what?
Well, I'm saying interesting good. I knew I could give you the long answers and ramble around to find the point I was making because it's a podcast. But you're also asking different questions that make me think more and go in depth to things. And, I remember joking in the old days about, some questions are, how did you and Mark O'Connor do that harmonica fiddle swap and Live and Learn? And how did that come together? And then there were the other questions, which were, why the hat?
Is that what you wanted? Clint, why the hat? Yeah.
Why the hat? Well, I finally came up with the answer to that question, why do you wear a black hat? And it hit me. I know now. It's because it makes my head look thinner.
I need to wear a black hat. I've had a big head my whole life. When I was a kid, when I was a young kid, my mom would have to cut slits into the sides of my T-shirts to get my head to go through because it was abnormally large.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I just had to make room for all those brains.
Yeah, I guess. Also, one of my best friends, and because we're going to play some of this on my radio show too, because I'm such a big fan, and I'm going to do radio and podcasts. This is going to be used everywhere, and even the countdown. So, but one of my dearest friends is named Eddie, and he was just recently asked on the national show if he could quarantine with one artist, who would it be? And he picked you, Clint Black. And
I saw that. I saw your tweet.
Yeah,
I saw that.
I was just curious what it's like.
Saying, Clint and I have nothing in common, and I'm thinking, yeah, we do. And then I went, no, wait a minute. I wasn't even my first concert. We have nothing in common.
What do you do during quarantine? Like, what are you doing? What are you watching? Like, what can I give to him to show him that you guys probably do have some stuff in common?
Well, I've watched everything on Netflix. We watched Ozark.
Oh man, me too.
Every movie. Love. I've watched the documentaries that Ray Romano made on building a stand-up act, and that Jerry Seinfeld did on, where he took you all the way back to his first joke at the place he told it, and went through all of his old material, and then his new documentary on building his new material. So I love to follow that stuff. I'm betting he's an Andy Griffith fan. Of course, we all are. For the Bosch on Amazon Prime is the best detective show ever. If you want to watch a show where the guy's not swinging off the side of a train, throwing grenades inside to kill the bad guys, a real detective show, Bosch.
I'm going to pass all that to Eddie and tell him this is what you two would be doing, watching Bosch and Ray Romano write for his first joke.
That's it.
All right. Clint.
We were made for each other for quarantine.
All right. Hey, I'll let you get back to your life, but I'm a massive fan. Thank you for your time, and good luck with the record, and man, just keep being awesome.
Hey, thanks. You too. A big fan of yours, and I really enjoyed this. Thanks.
Thanks, Clint. Hopefully I'll talk to you soon.
And let's get out there and work again soon.
All right. Hopefully I'll see you soon.
Hope so.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.
Hey guys, it's Bobby Bones. Welcome to the channel. If you're new to the channel, subscribe and then go check it out. A lot of artists, a lot of songwriters, a lot of music. Welcome to the BobbyCast channel.